Hello and welcome to another episode of the RevRx podcast. My name is Chad Potts. I'm your host, and I'm so excited to bring to you my friend, Patrick Ryan. Patrick is an innovator and a pioneer in the field of health and fitness. He became disenchanted with the traditional fitness model, and he carved his own path. And what he's doing today is he's coaching what it looks like to truly be healthy. A lot of times when we think about being healthy, we think about getting in shape, being physically fit. And yes, that's part of it. But what he's going to talk to us about today is the fact that true health is much more than physical fitness. Matter of fact, that's only about 14% of what it looks like to truly be healthy. So you're going to want to watch to the end of this episode if you want to discover what it really looks like to be healthy, what it really looks like to thrive in life and really live that abundance that we were created to live. I introduce to you my good friend, Patrick Ryan. Patrick, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here. How's your day been?
It's been great. Yeah. Patrick and I, we've become friends over the last few months. We've attended a retreat together, and Patrick is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things fitness, all things health, all things movement. And so excited about what he brings to us today. And he has a unique lens through which he sees the fitness industry. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go. But Patrick, just kind of wanted to start off with your journey. Who is Patrick? How have you evolved into the space that you're currently in today? And then really your overall perception of health, fitness, movement, that sort of thing.
Yeah, man. Great question. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to jump in and dive in and have these kinds of conversations. My name is Patrick Ryan. I am co-owner and co-founder of Aware Fitness Coaching, where myself and my wife help individuals, or in this case, high-performing helpers, through our proven approach of fitness and nutrition coaching. But to continue to answer your question, Chad, as to how did I get here? What has happened relative to my journey is obviously, like most personal trainers, I started personal training in the mainstream fitness industry. After you get a gym membership, you usually get a couple free sessions with a coach to really, our job in that instance is to help new members just get oriented and familiar with the equipment, the facility, and then help run a little bit of an assessment. And then if they're looking for further support with their movement and nutrition in some cases, then we would work with them in more depth. However, it was really interesting in that it only took about a year and a half for me to realize that coaching people in person, at least through the general lens of personal training, was actually not serving the clients to the greatest degree that they deserved and helping them actually get to and stay at their goals. And what I mean by that was, as time went on, I just started to get a deep sense of incongruency when it came to the business model that's put in place by the mainstream fitness industry, and how it really perpetuates the client becoming a repeat customer as opposed to actually helping people get to their goals to allow them to essentially fire their coach so they can move on to bigger and better health and fitness related problems, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this was the early days of online coaching, where the only way that you could really coach anybody online was through email and text message support. There weren't any of the online apps that you see today that are so prevalent and part of the fitness space now. So it was during that time where I was really acknowledging, it's actually the 23 hours of the day that the real change happens, as opposed to the 1 hour of the day that people are in the gym. Not to discount the hour of the day that you're spending moving, but
yeah,
it was really, really perpetuating a lot of confusion for, I would say, about 85 to 90% of my clients that were being sold. They were being marketed to by the mainstream fitness industry that, okay, all you got to do is get your gym membership. You sign up with a coach to work with them 2 days, so you maybe 2 hours a week. And then all your wildest health and fitness dreams will somehow come true. And the vast majority of them, they were still showing up to their sessions, but they got to a point where they still weren't reaching their goals. And their frustration was very visible, and their confusion was very visible.
Yeah.
And that was telling me, okay, I got into this industry because I wanted to help people solve some of these deeper fitness and nutrition related problems so they could graduate to more unique challenges in their lives.
Yeah.
And it started letting me know you know what? The most important piece of gym equipment and fitness equipment is your phone,
Wow.
is your laptop, is all the, technology that we take for granted. And we got to learn how we can leverage these pieces of equipment to dramatically improve their well-being and allow them to know how to navigate the 23 hours of the day that they're not in the gym, and how that's either improving their health and fitness or detracting from it.
Yeah. And that's super profound. I really like your curiosity because, there's something about you, almost a pioneer of sorts, that began to kind of expand a little and say, well, this is okay, but how can we make this better? Because this isn't solving the major problems.
Right.
Is it better than nothing? Sure. Is an hour in the gym better than no time in the gym? Absolutely.
100%.
But I really like that whole concept of what do the other 23 hours a day look like? An hour in a gym, and this is kind of the way I see this. Correct me if I'm wrong. An hour in a gym does not make you healthy. Is that?
Yeah. It's a profound statement, man. And what's wild about what you just said is it's crazy that we live in a world that maybe saying something like that can be so polarizing.
Yeah.
Right? In mine and Megan's world, the overarching umbrella term we use to help people understand like where they're at is like helping them break up from what we call diet culture.
Yeah.
And
right.
if we take a step back to zoom out even further, what that essentially means is helping people understand that they too are victims of predatory capitalism.
Yeah.
And what that has essentially done to most people through how they are marketed to. And I want to be very clear, I'm not placing blame, shame, or judgment on the consumer. However, part of this is having other professionals, qualified professionals such as myself, you in the healthcare, fitness, wellness, health space, having these conversations to help people understand, okay, where you're at may not necessarily be your fault, but it now becomes your responsibility because we have awareness around it. And to your point earlier, it's helping them understand that we live in a society that is so outcome driven. Like we are neurotic about it to the point of just completely being obsessed with the outcome. And in my case, in Megan's case, we're obsessed with the scale to the point to where we're willing to sacrifice the deeper dimensions of our well-being, mental, emotional, environmental, social, existential, spiritual health to obtain a number on the scale, because society at large has told us that all your wildest dreams will come true whenever you get to that goal weight. So to your point, it becomes this process of like, everybody's so focused on this kind of like binary black and white on off switch of, oh, if I do this, it's so transactional in nature. If I do this, then it's going to lead to that, which I'm sure when guiding patients through their health journey, yes, there's a science to it, right? There's some black and white elements to that. But as you start to get to the deeper nitty gritty and actually helping a person, that's where the gray area comes in place.
Absolutely.
That's where the art of coaching somebody, the art of helping somebody with their deep health comes into play. And given that we live in a society that is we do not value process. We do not value the journey. We value the outcome. So then we think everything's going to all our problems are going to magically disappear when we get to said goal.
Right.
When in actuality, like the real work, hence the 23 hours of the day, that's all the idle time that you're spending working, going about your life. That's the process. Yeah. Right. So if you don't have the process in place, that 1 hour of time in the gym is not going to be nearly as substantial as you would want it to be, which then perpetuates this whole on-off again dynamic that a lot of people deal with and not being able to stay consistent. And then the only avenue they know of to reestablish that consistency is to go back to the same gym, sign up for the same membership, work with the same coach that gave them the same kind of feedback around diet and exercise alone.
Right.
That didn't solve the problem in the first place.
100%.
Yeah. And we wonder why we as a society have such a disordered, unhealthy relationship with exercise, with food, with all the things that we know when done properly will help you get where you want to go.
And I really like the term you use, transactional, because
Yes.
that's what I see a lot in all of my worlds.
Yeah.
So from a pharmaceutical perspective, people are very much thinking, all right, well, if I take this pill and I take this pill and I take this pill, then I'm going to be healthy.
Right.
And I'm definitely not downplaying the role medications play in people's lives, but
Sure.
I think we very much live in a world where medications are overprescribed. There's a pill for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that pill, while it may help manage a disease state, it's a resource.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tool in your tool belt. But holistically, what are you doing to get healthy besides just taking that transactional pill? Okay, I check it off, I check it off, I check it off. Am I healthy yet?
Right.
And then, I see it spiritually too,
Mm-hmm.
where for a lot of people, spirituality, following the Lord, it looks very transactional.
Yes.
It's okay. I went to church this week. All
Yep.
right, I sent my tithe check in this week. I prayed this week. Whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
I read my Bible.
Right.
Yeah, I've checked off all of the boxes. I've fulfilled all of my transactions, and therefore I'm supposed to have all my wildest dreams come true. And when we get wrapped up in those transactions and we forget about the big picture, we forget about things from a holistic perspective. I think we kind of silo in too much and we expect too much from those transactions. So one of the things I love that you and Megan are doing is that you're really tying in a holistic view of health. You'd mentioned the number on the scale, and you guys have phrases for certain values. You say there's vanity measures and there's sanity measures. Would you mind explaining that just a little bit? That's really something that's resonated with me a good bit.
Megan puts it really well, like weight loss at any cost, right? To the point to where most people, like we've had clients, for instance, that would say get sick, like they'd fall ill with the cold or the flu or COVID or whatever, and they'd end up losing weight, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
while being sick, they're applauding the fact that they lost weight. And it's
Right.
like, it's really important to take time to acknowledge how you lost weight.
Right.
And using myself as an example, in the early stages of my not just fitness career as a professional, but my health career as an individual that is trying to make sense of the world and learn how this stuff actually works.
Mm-hmm.
I went through my own journey of transformation in my roots in a lot of the fitness industry initially were set in the all natural bodybuilding space. And I went into that. What initially was fueling it was kind of twofold. I had just finished playing baseball. I made it to the collegiate level where I had the opportunity to continue playing at the collegiate level, and I was burnt out. I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to continue to push my body and continue to see what I was capable of. And I always knew the next step for me at that time was bodybuilding. So that was a ton of fun from a artistic standpoint, and being like, man, how can you really adjust your eating and your exercise in such a way to look a certain way, which on the surface isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, what I didn't have a whole lot of contextual understanding of the mental, emotional, and I would say spiritual component of what drives us to do what we were doing. So what was also fueling my interest and my need at that point to compete in bodybuilding was a lot of insecurity, a lot of shame. I had gone through a really, really difficult breakup at that point in time where I was really in a state of confusion, especially during college years, where most friends of mine, again, nothing against them, we're all going through our own journey. In college, most people are drinking, they're smoking, they're doing all sorts of stuff just to find a gauge and have fun and connect with people.
Explore.
Yeah. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do any of that kind of stuff during college because it didn't resonate with me. And it also, the environments in which that was being done, the set and the setting was making me really uncomfortable. So I went into a state of over control. And so I was using exercise to solve an emotional problem. And I didn't know that at the time. So I kept pushing and pushing and pushing. I competed 2 out of the 3 years that I was training. I looked as lean as I could have ever looked, right? I wanted to know what it was like to have a six pack. I wanted to know what it was like to be as striated as I could. But coincidentally, as I kept pushing that, I pushed it to an extreme to where I ended up getting sick. I went to the urgent care at the time to get looked at and have some tests done. They ran blood tests, they ran a urine test, and they told me, hey, dude, if you keep pushing yourself with your training and your nutrition, if you keep pushing, you're going to go into kidney failure. Like I was experiencing very acute forms of renal insufficiency.
Wow.
And it was at that moment was my kind of wake up call in the emergency room where I was like, okay, I'm done with this. Like I've seen that this is actually not adding more years to my life because I was pushing it to the extreme, mind you, but it was solely for vanity. And there was no, what Megan and I call sanity metrics being put in place to where I wasn't going through the process of working with a mental health therapist. I wasn't getting an understanding of what was fueling me emotionally to have so much control over my exercise and my eating and my life, to the point that it was making me a hermit during a time in my life in college that is important to have more free space and go explore and try stuff. Like, so, I was able to get a really sobering understanding at an early age that, hey, there is a balance around like exercising, eating well, and it helping you look better and that helping you feel better. But you can have too much of what some may say is a good thing. And when we're solely driven by vanity alone, I actually think that's what perpetuates a lot of people's inconsistencies, because most fitness professionals in the space are marketing to their followers, their audience, solely focusing on the outcome.
Yeah.
Right. And if we take the time to look at the data in the health of our country, by the year 2030, 50% of our adult population in the United States is going to be considered obese. And I understand that that's still somewhat of a vanity metric, right? So it's acknowledging, how do we have healthier conversations around weight, around body fat percentage, while building a healthier root system, as Megan and I call it, in the sanity metrics? Like, how is your stress? How is your ability to manage your emotions and regulate your nervous system? How is your relationship with food? How is your body image improving? And those are the true anchors that I believe most fitness and health professionals need to be focusing conversations on, as opposed to just telling clients, push harder, restrict your diet further, because it's not going to help somebody get to their goal and stay there with healthy fuel long term.
I love that. And I think a lot of what we're kind of maybe dancing around is this concept of, how do you define health? Health is not defined by those vanity measures, or true health anyway. When we try to market, or when the mainstream fitness industry, food industry, medical industry, whatever, when we try to market towards those vanity measures, so you need to be this weight, we've got a lot of shame built into that, a lot of judgment built into that. You need to look like this, you need to be able to perform this, but then taking a step back and saying, okay, well, even if I weigh that much, even if I meet these certain vanity measures, am I more healthy than I was before? And maybe in a lot of cases the answer is yes, but I don't think in every case the answer would be yes, because again, it comes back to that whole concept of weight loss at what cost.
Right.
And specifically the rapid weight loss that a lot of things are marketed towards. So, so if you had to just kind of give an overall concept of what do you view as a definition of health, using those sanity metrics instead of those vanity metrics, what would be kind of your holistic perspective when it comes to that?
That's a really good question.
Put you on the spot a little bit. Sorry.
No, you're cool, man. This is why we have these conversations. I think it comes down to one word, and that word is presence. And I think this is part of the reason why so many people that want to be healthy and strive to be healthy seem to be perpetually confused. Is diet and exercise represents what we now know is the physical dimension of your deep health. And that only represents 14% of what's actually needed to not only be healthy, but stay consistent in being healthy.
Yes, bingo.
And So what that tells us is there are 6 other dimensions of deep health that we're not having conversations around in the fitness and health space that I'm in. And I believe there's a substantial amount of overlap in the work that you do in healthcare and many other ethically value-driven individuals that are doing that work as well. And those dimensions are your social health, your environmental health, your existential/spiritual health. There's your financial health, your mental health, and your emotional health. And those all, in addition to the 7th dimension in your physical health, that's what represents what's needed to build a healthy and sustainable life. And when it comes to this area of presence, it ties into this concept of when in doubt, zoom out, as it applies to the environmental dimension of your health, because you can't know where you're going unless you know where you're at. And having an understanding of the systems that have been in place through the coaches you've worked with, the facilities that you worked out at, the type of media that you consume and that's marketed to you, having an understanding of, oh yeah, I see this for what it is now. Like it's noise. It's not some of these things, some of these mechanisms in our industry were not built to help solve the problem. They were built to just take your money and go. So allowing people, in this case, to that definition, know that they can be present with themselves and bring it back to one moment, one breath, one meal, one workout at a time, that if they can make subtle adjustments to what they're doing day to day and being present with their behaviors associated with that, they're winning. Because as you know, it's a process of compounding interest. It's a matter of continuing to check the right boxes while being present with the checking of those boxes, that you do build the positive compounding interest, that you then no longer become dependent on that system that wasn't solving the deeper problems in the first place.
I love that concept of presence. So we're used to making this transactional, going back to that concept of checking this off. Okay, well, I'm supposed to be healthy because I've done these things today. Again, and kind of reinterpreting our concept of what does it mean to be healthy. It's not just a physical fitness kind of health. It's been beat into me that health is physical health.
It's all external.
Yes, hey, that's why I'm coaching. That's why I'm coming alongside guys and saying, hey, that's a, just like what you said, that's a piece of the puzzle, but it's definitely not the whole thing. It's not even the majority of it. Realizing that to be healthy is not just to be physically fit. That's healthier than if you're not, but that's not the whole puzzle. But then thinking about how do you feel? Checking in with yourself. That, to me, when I hear you say presence, that's what comes to mind is, what is your relationship with the things that you're doing? What does it look like, and what does it mean when we say, changing your relationship with food? Because I think a lot of us, when we say we want to be healthy or get healthy, a lot of that comes from a place of shame and blame. It comes from a place of, okay, my doctor said this, or somebody made a comment about this, or I don't like how I look in pictures, so I realize I need to do something. But then that's a far different motivation than changing your relationship with those things. So what does that look like for you?
True, man. Absolutely. As you were talking about that, it made me think of a quote that I always find really helpful. It's like, you can't shame yourself into change. You can only love yourself into evolution. And why I think that's so important and prevalent is it allows us to get an understanding of what are the primary drivers or fuel sources behind the decisions we're making to make the food choices we're making, and to make the decisions around why we're exercising, what exercising we're doing. If we use myself as an example, it's just the truth. And for the vast majority of my 20s into my mid to late-ish 20s, a lot of my exercise was fueled by shame. It was fueled by, because that's all I knew. Like when it just comes down to it, it's like those were the only tools that I had in my tool belt. And it wasn't until I decided to take a step outside of my comfort zone around the age of 28 and start sourcing outside help for mental health counseling and therapy, you start to get more resources. You start to get more tools. You know what I mean? So going back to your point earlier of presence and trying to build an awareness, that's why we call ourselves aware fitness coaching. It's just helping raise people's level of awareness. of the behaviors they're already taking part in. Like what's going on in my world? How's work been? Have I had a difficult, series of days with my partner or somebody at work? Or, did I get run off the road, road rage type experience, whatever it might be, because there is always an element of understanding one's relationship with food through the lens of emotional eating, right? So if we're not taking time to acknowledge how stressed we are, like I'll continue to use myself as an example, I love sweets. Like I love desserts. There was once a part of me that would eat an entire sleeve of Oreo cookies because I was super stressed, on top of feeling like I've got to overtly control everything I was doing, going back to the days of bodybuilding. Yeah,
Guilty.
like we've all been there, and being able to guide ourselves or myself through a continuum of like, oh, I'm still going to emotionally eat. I'm not I'm a human being. So I'm not this robot that's just never going to eat fun foods. It's having an awareness of like, yeah, I'm pretty stressed right now. But if I'm going to eat something that most other people would deem bad, I'm going to eat it mindfully. So that way you go from this continuum of like me of the past eating maybe an entire sleeve of those cookies to, I don't know, maybe eating one or two with a glass of milk, and like literally sitting there, not being on my phone, not watching TV, being present with the discomfort that I'm feeling from being stressed, but also being present with the food that I'm consuming. And if we're wanting to take it deeper, the deeper meaning behind that food as it ties to family, right? Like, because for me, sweets go back to me being a kid, 3, 4, 5 years old, eating lunch, my mom making lunch for me, and then giving me a Little Debbie fudge round for dessert. You know what I mean? So like,
token of love.
Yeah. So if we're not willing as healthcare fitness professionals, if we're not willing to go deeper into having those conversations and getting to know our clients and the relationship with food they already have, telling them to not eat a food that they love, you're doing them a huge disservice, because then you're just perpetuating more disordered eating patterns in relationship with food.
And so it kind of does away with that all or nothing perspective.
Yes.
People are going to cheat. And, it's one of those things where you almost just want to say that in so many words to say, don't expect perfection of yourself, because I love what you said. You're not a robot. You're not going to be perfect. You're still going to crave certain foods. You still are going to want to eat certain foods. And what I love that you call them fun foods. Those things aren't off limits. And I think that all or nothing mentality really just sets us up to fail, because what it does is it ignites that shame factor, that judgment factor. Okay, I've messed up again. I'm nothing but a failure. And then that creates even more of a disruptive eating pattern of, okay, well, how do I cope with the shame because I just messed up on my diet, I just cheated on my diet, etc. Well, now that makes me want to eat more of that bad food.
Right.
And it's a cycle that, that's going to spiral out of control at some point. And so, for me, I think that's a really key point when you're looking at your relationship with fitness, your relationship with food, your relationship with nutrition, is thinking about this concept of, okay, nothing's really off limits. It's okay to have fun. I don't have to pursue health at the cost of my well-being. I don't have to pursue health at the cost of me having fun. I can do both at the same time. And that's one of the things that I really like that you guys teach, is that, this is not a journey of sadness and sorrow as we pursue health. You really need to be able to see it as a long-term health journey and allow yourself mistakes along the way. And give yourself a lot of grace. I think that's important as well.
You hit the nail on the head. Like, it's acknowledging that you can learn to learn. Is, I think, the key foundational aspect. But it doesn't happen by you cattle prodding yourself and yelling at yourself every single time you make a mistake. It happens by being like, yeah, it happened. It's a bummer. Especially if we're taking time to pay attention to how that feels, like digestively, we're bloated, we're uncomfortable, we're gassy, like whatever, like there's a lot tied into that as well. But being able to sit in that and be like, it's all good. Like, this too shall pass, and I'll be able to make a subtle adjustment on the next meal. But that's because we're giving ourselves space to be like, you're human, man. Like, you're learning. There's no need to yell at yourself the entire time.
Absolutely. And, and I speak to that because I've been there.
Yeah,
And, I think maybe a lot of the listeners that are tuning into us will say the same. You start a diet on Monday, and by Wednesday you've blown it, and you just think, well, I might as well just cheat the whole week. And in that situation, yeah, I mean, by the time next Monday rolls around, you might have lost some ground,
sure.
but if you think about it as, all right, that was just one decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one meal away from getting right back on track. Give
Right.
yourself that grace. Don't punish yourself. Don't, like you said, cattle prod yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself grace. Give yourself compassion. Expect that you're going to fail. I think expectations go a long ways, because when I would have people that would sign up with me for a certain nutrition plan or whatever, they would say, all right, I'm going to do perfect. I'm going to be on this for 3 months. I'm going to, and 2 weeks in, when you mess up, well, if your expectation is perfection, then of course you're mad at yourself.
Right.
And so I think expectations setting is a large piece of that as well. And I think that's a lot of what leads to inconsistency. You guys are what I consider the consistency experts.
Sure.
You guys really teach a lot about how to be consistent. Around New Year's, you guys had a challenge of, are you tired of making New Year's resolutions? Well, don't make any more. Just, let this be the last resolution that you make, because we're going to teach you some things that'll help you be consistent. So can you speak a little bit to this concept of consistency? Number one, what do you think is key to consistency? But then number two, what advice would you give to somebody who's struggling with it? They're trying their best, they're setting out, they kind of keep failing, they keep being inconsistent. What would be your advice at that point?
Absolutely. So, great question. So I think the first question you asked is almost like a two-parter.
Okay.
So the first part comes back to a point you made just a few moments ago around acknowledging that you're going to fail or you're going to make mistakes. And the reason I say that is a good phrase for everybody to keep in their back pocket is there's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
I like it. Yeah.
And I know that's an easier said than done thing. And I don't want to come off as like, hey, like it's so easy, but it's just like, you will get to that point where you're able to reference and observe a mistake through a neutral lens.
Yeah.
And just be like, oh, okay. And then you're able to kind of make tweaks to it and all that kind of stuff. The second part of that is acknowledging food and movement, i.e. exercise, falls on a continuum. So you're going to be navigating different stages or seasons of your life where it is actually going to be more beneficial for you, if you're wanting to keep consistency going, to dial back the intensity to your movement in this particular case.
Yeah.
Right? As an example, we have clients that they're navigating a surgery. Like, you're going to be undergoing surgery, you're going to be undergoing recovery. However, you're still going to be consuming food to some degree. You may have the opportunity to move to some degree, even if it means something as simple as walking, because that ties into issues in the fitness industry, because it's all fed to us in a way to where it's just this overt breakneck, push yourself super hard every workout type dynamic. And then anything that's less than that doesn't count.
Yeah.
Right. So it's acknowledging that food and movement falls on a continuum. There's more intense forms of movement and less intense forms of movement, but they both count.
Sure.
And then, your second question, as far as advice, I would continue to give people that are going through that, what we call guided trial and error. They're trying stuff. They're maybe not getting it right away. I think it's interesting you bring that up, because we did a training in our free community last night, in helping people acknowledge and understand, because most people don't, I didn't for the longest time, understand the levels of competence. Because when it comes to the stages of competency, you make your way through what is known as unconscious incompetence at the very beginning. You don't know what you don't know. Right. And then you make your way to conscious incompetence, where you're aware of the things you don't know. Okay. And then you make your way to what is known as conscious competence, where you know what you need to be doing and you have to actively think. That requires energy, brain power to be able to do the thing. In this case, prep the right foods, go grocery shopping, do the things that you know you need to be doing. And then once you get enough reps in doing that, you make your way into this transition to unconscious competence. You're at the identity level, like it like it's the back of your hand. However, one of the most key distinctions relative to your question, as far as the advice, is as you're making that transition from conscious competence to unconscious competence, your internal dialogue during that stage of getting reps in through conscious competence, making an attempt at failing and not getting where you want to go, like how you talk to yourself during that time is going to make or break your ability to make whatever skill it is that you're developing like it's the back of your hand.
Yeah, taking it from, okay, the attempts that are not natural to me.
Yes.
I know what to do. I'm doing these things. No, I'm not succeeding every time at them, but that's where it's feedback. It's not failure.
Right.
But then being able to take that and make it part of your identity, make it habit, make it who you are, make it what you do, without even thinking about it. I think, man, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, the phrase stood out to me. You said seeing, the failure, for lack of a better term, through a neutral lens, and being able to anticipate that there will be moments of failure, but we don't have to see that as bad.
Right.
We can see failure as learning. We can see failure as growing. We can see failure as a way to move forward. We can see failure, in your illustration here, as a way to get from, the unnatural to the habit.
Yep.
I think that's extremely profound. So
thanks, man. I'm happy that resonated with you. It
yeah.
makes me think of a client we had worked with in the past who was just navigating life and was going through a season of change where consistency wasn't really where they wanted it to be. And they really loved mountain biking. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to mountain bike or anything of that sort, but
yeah, not a lot. But
it's there. Depending on where you're riding, it can be a really strenuous form of activity. Like you're having to ride your bike up a mountain, up a hill, and it takes a substantial amount of conditioning and muscular and even mental endurance to be able to do that. And he was getting back in the swing of doing that, and he wasn't able to ride up the hill. And he was really beating himself up over the fact that he couldn't ride up the hill. And we had to really work diligently on reframing that experience, where it's that we call it hike a bike. Like you have to get off and you have to hike your bike up the freaking mountain, right? And
right.
For most guys, that can be a demoralizing kind of experience. But it's like, dude, you're outside. You get to hike your bike up a mountain in a beautiful space. Like you can take a break and like look, turn around and enjoy the view of where you're hiking. And it changed everything for him, because then you just acknowledge, okay, I'm at my physical limit right now. That's not going to be that way forever. But dude, I get to hop off. I get to walk my bike up this trail. I get to take a break. I can have a snack. Like it completely changes that entire experience or workout. And that just takes reps in reframing that, to your point, in more of a neutral kind of perspective.
I love that. It's almost like there's a shift there, just in one small word. Instead of I have to hike my bike up, I get to hike my bike up.
Sure.
And realizing that, okay, I'm not where I want to be. And of course, using that tension to be able to say, okay, well, that's going to motivate me a little bit, but I'm not going to dwell, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this, why am I here? Why can't I do that? But I'm going to say, you know what, this is where I am right now, and I'm going to embrace it. And I'm not going to be here forever. I'm going to get better every day.
Right.
But instead of living in some fantasy future, you're living in the now. And to bring it full circle, you're living in the present.
100%.
You're present with where you are, with the relationship you're having with whatever you're performing, whatever you're doing. And, man, what a beautiful conversation this has been, to just kind of pull that back around and say, it's about presence. It's about presence. So
100%, man. And to that point, it's, especially if we're able to view exercise in this particular case through a continuum, where it's like you're still moving your body.
Yeah.
You're still walking. You're pushing something, in this case, a bike up the hill. Like you're still getting exercise. And like you're talking about, it's the exercise you need at that point in time. So I'm glad that all landed for you, man.
It's the sanity measures, not the vanity measures. So
it's all helping people navigate and build better understanding of how they think and why they think the way that they do, and how that influences their decisions around eating and exercise, and their relationship with the foods they eat and the exercise they do. Because if you don't do that work, it's just going to be more of the same well into the future.
Awesome. Patrick, are one of my favorite people. I've really come to know and appreciate you lately. And if this landed with some of my listeners, where would they go to find out more about you, what you're doing, what Megan's doing, and where would they be able to get into your world a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the vast majority of contact, communication, content in general is going to be through my Instagram page. So they can reach me at Patrick_Ryan Fit, FIT. Feel free to follow me there, ask any questions, check out the link in my bio. My wife and I do have a free fitness community that you can access where Megan and I, we run a free training / masterclass every single month covering topics that in this case are leading to people's lack of consistency with their exercise and diet.
Yeah. And I'll put that in the show notes as well, so you guys can check him out. But thank you so much, Patrick. I'm extremely excited to just sit down and chat with you anytime. It's always a pleasure, but so much value that you bring to the world and to our listeners. And so thank you so much for being here and for being you.
Anytime, man. It was an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the RevRx podcast. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today, and if so, we'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode from us. Also, feel free to leave us reviews and comments, as we'd love to hear from you. Be blessed and be the very best you.